A sunny day here in Wesel, Germany, where we want to test out those two here, the brand new Oppo Find X9 Ultra versus the predecessor, the Oppo Find X8 Ultra, both Hasselblad branded, and they also feature a quadruple lens setup, but with one big difference, where we have a 6x magnification on the Find X8 Ultra. The Find X9 Ultra offers a 10x magnification on its second tele zoom and a very large, one of the largest in its class, periscope tele zoom of 101.28 inch size sensor, 70mm. We have a pretty large but only 101.5 inch tele zoom primary lens there on the Find X8 Ultra, and this one is also 70mm. Then we have a bit of a downgrade for the main camera sensor, 1 inch on the X8 Ultra and 101.12 inch size. But is it really a downgrade? We will figure it out in this comparison. And then of course we have some front-facing shooters here. I think we start off with the front-facing videos. Front-facing video now on both feature autofocus, and I see already, let's see here, autofocus on the Find X8 Ultra, autofocus on the Find X9 Ultra. We have much better HDR on the Find X9 Ultra. You see a bit of blue in the sky there. We have 0.8 times magnifications. I can go to 1x and 1x, and if I want to, even 2x. If you have some lipstick or earbuds that you want to show, this is possible. Let's go back to 0.8 times magnifications. And yeah, which one is performing better here? I think the lens coating might also be a bit affected on the Find X8 Ultra. How good is stabilization here when I pan around a little bit? I think both are doing a fine job here. There's one big difference, because on the Find X8 Ultra I cannot switch to the back-facing cameras, but I can do so on the Find X9 Ultra. So and yeah, you see here now the Find X8 Ultra, and we will stop recording here, switch the lens and go to the main lens as well. And as you see here, now we have both of them here running around, can pan around. You see that the colors are pretty much identical between those here. You don't notice much of a difference between 1 inch and the 101.12 inch size sensor here, hopefully. And yeah, we can also 4K 30 with what I'm using, but it goes up to 4K 60 and I think 4K 120 frames per second. Go to the ultra wide angle here. The ultra wide angle screen at least appears to be very, very similar. Do we notice any stabilization differences between those two here? Not so much. Maybe a bit tad warmer on the X8 Ultra. You tell me in the comments. And then let's perform a little zoom test. We want to try zoom in and see what's going on with the cinema. So let's check it out. We go directly to 3x. It switched lenses on both. And then we go to 6x here and 6x there. It's not switching lenses on the X9 Ultra, but on the X8 Ultra we have a dedicated 6x lens, but now we have a dedicated 10x lens, and here I have to move in manually as well, crop from the 6x lens. So which one is doing better there? Maximum is 30x on both. And which one is performing better? Do you notice much of a difference? I think the X9 Ultra is much more stable and should be a bit more detailed. And let's go back to the 1x sensor. There we go, 1x sensor. So what do you think about those here? Now, vlogging style on both here with the 1x sensor. What can you say about the bokeh here? What about the HDR? Sun is in the background. Which one is performing better in your opinion? Either the Find X9 Ultra or the Find X8 Ultra. And of course 4K 30 frames per second. I can also go and choose the ultra wide angle for vlogging if I need to. Want to show more of my environment. There we go. And there we go. I have to move my hands out of the way because both have the ultra wide angle quite low. So otherwise you see my hands in this shot. Hopefully not right now. And this is the ultra wide angle here at 4K 30 frames per second. Which one is performing better in your opinion? Write it down in the comments. Here we have the photos, and yeah, I was a bit in a rush. This is why a few hours my flight is going to China, so I had to do it as quick as possible. First thing that you notice is high resolution. This is 70mm on both. Here we have a higher resolution on the Find X9 Ultra and high resolution. Both have set high resolution mode, but the Find X9 Ultra by default is like almost always, even if it's really, really dark, then it's not using it, but otherwise it's really using the 30 megapixels there. In terms of detail level, it appears to be a bit sharper, or maybe the focus was wrong on the X9 Ultra, but this seems to be a bit soft there. to zoom out quite a bit, and then it becomes like a little bit sharper, but it's not 100% as sharp as here. But this is something that I noticed throughout the pictures, that the X8 Ultra tends to sharpen things up a little bit more, have more contrast. On the selfie, it's a different kind of thing. We have 32 megapixels here, and on the Find X9 Ultra, it is spinning down to 12 megapixels, or 14.7 that calculated here. And when you zoom out, you see that there's a bit more detail, a bit more sharpening going on. It's a bit smoother here. Both do fake eyebrows and fake eyes. Yeah, a bit more fakish here, I think, on the Find X9 Ultra, where here it's hard to tell, but it's also a bit fakish there. It's just a bit of a different color. This is a bit warmer here. This is a bit colder. You choose your poison, but I would rate them identical with minor differences. Portrait shots, I only did a few portrait shots. I didn't have much time. This is 35 millimeter here. I think this is one very important portrait shot mode. Crop in from the main camera sensors. Both use different main camera sensors, so this is something there you have to check. This is a bit colder. This is a bit warmer there. It's a bit smoother here in my face. Overall, it doesn't seem to be so over sharpened or sharpened up so much as the X8 Ultra is doing. You choose your poison. I like the not so sharpened up look on the X9 Ultra a little bit more than the little bit over sharpened look on the X8 Ultra. I can agree with people who say no, the portrait on the X8 Ultra is better because it seems to be more detailed and they don't care so much about natural shots there. But overexposed here on the side, this is not a problem on the X8 9 and the X9 Ultra. Telezoom shots, I think I misfocused here. This is a little bit out of focus here at 6x, where here this one is in focus. When we zoom in even further, 10x, now we have the opposite. First of all, higher resolution here, but even if I go down here, you will see that it is destroying the crop from the 6x sensor that we have. Is this crop from the 6x sensor? Yes, that we have on the Find X8 Ultra. So it's much clearer here on the X9 Ultra. And the more you zoom in, this is like 30x now, the more it becomes evident here. If you look at the face there and the details there and compare it with here, this is a night and day difference. There you see the better telezoom sensor. Another portrait shot here with 70 millimeters, both doing a fine job, but the same thing that we saw with 35 millimeter in general, a bit softer and smoother on the X9 Ultra, which I like personally a bit better, because here I think look a bit ugly because it's sharpening a little bit too much up. And yeah, again, this seems to be a bit warmer, this is a bit colder here, but the overexposure on the side is gone. And then macro shots, both are doing a fine job. Not much of a difference actually, which is quite good in terms of like the close focusing capabilities. It's just that the white balance on the X9 Ultra is doing a better job because it was a little bit more warmish, this kind of motive here, but in terms of detail levels, identical. Focus fall off is a bit faster there on the X9 Ultra because of the larger sensor that we have there. Talking about the larger sensor here, I try to give you an example how you can see it. If for those kinds of close-ups here where you want to read everything here on this bottle, the X8 Ultra is better because everything, first of all, is a bit more sharpened up. You see some sharpening artifacts eventually, but you can read clearly the QR code and the text here, which is getting a bit softer, but it's still sharp. But here, higher resolution, but even if I zoom out here, this is supposed to be sharp. Here it's like focus fall off already, so it's not 100% sharp. It's not the same sharpness that we have on the X8 Ultra. So I think the X9 Ultra, either because of the higher resolution or because it in general decided not to sharpen up so much, is a bit softer, and focus fall off is faster there. In terms of like bokeh, you see that the bokeh is a tiny bit, really have to like look at it, maybe a tiny bit softer there on the X9 Ultra in comparison to the X8 Ultra, but f2.1, f2.2, and the sensor size difference, 101.28 and 101.5, is also not a huge difference between those two. 6x optical on the X8 Ultra is beating the 6x crop on the sensor. You see it here on the text slightly. It's better, but it's so close that this is the only instance where I could find the difference, and we see that the optical zoom has a bit of an advantage over the digital one. I couldn't find any other instances. Ultra wide angle a bit wider on the X9 Ultra, a bit more closed up here. Some weird artifacts going on. There's a bit of a dim lit situation here on the X9 Ultra. I had to zoom out a little bit again because again it's like taking the 30 megapixel shots there, where here it's just the 12 megapixel 14.7 like it says here. Detail levels almost identical, which is, I think, an upside for the X9 Ultra because it has a wider field of view. Then chromatic aberration issues, both have this with the lenses there a little bit, as you see here, and yeah, focus fall-offs, very similar, not much of a difference between those. Color differences, photographing this a bit cooler here on the X8 Ultra and a bit sharpened up more with the 47mm where it's a bit softer here, but also a bit warmer, and actually the more warmer picture is more accurate, so I think they tuned the color sensor a little bit better there, or it got an upgrade on the X9 Ultra. And then if you really want to pixel peep and see the bokeh difference between the X8 Ultra's 1-inch and the little bit smaller 101.2-inch size sensor, then you see that the bokeh balls here are a bit smoother than on the X9 Ultra, but it could be also that if you look down below, it's a bit overexposed, it's a bit underexposed. There is a difference. It might be also a bit more contrasty look on the X9 Ultra, but yeah, I think there's a bit of a sensor difference as well that you can see sometimes eventually. Then a bit of more sunny daylight. What I noticed as well, again on the telezoom sensor, primary telezoom sensor, it is sharpening things up a little bit more, sometimes even inventing stuff, because I think it tries to invent some skin here and adding some pores, which is actually more smooth. This is made out of plastic, it is smooth. And the X9 Ultra is more realistic, even though this looks a bit more detailed for sure. Yes, I can imagine that people would like this a little bit better because it's also more sharper towards the sides there, where the X9 Ultra keeps it a little bit softer there. When we check out the ultra wide angle shot, we have a bit more bluish exposure, a bit more warmish exposure, a bit more warmish colors, yellow and red colors there. Especially in the sky, you see it here, a bit more bluish, a bit wider field of view again, and the detail level is winning for the X9 Ultra, because here I think it's a bit soft, maybe a bit too soft on the X8 Ultra. And yes, it's both have to do tons of sharpening, but the sharpening algorithms on the X9 Ultra seem to be a bit better, especially also towards the sides, where it's getting focus fall off quite fast, and not only focus fall off, but it's getting quite a little bit there soft towards the corners. When we check out the telezoom sensor at 10x here, we also see interesting more resolution here, more sharpened up picture here. When I go down here to roughly the same kind of cutout, one could argue that the X8 Ultra is a little bit better, but if you zoom in a little bit further, you will see like 2 times here, and we go to, let's go just 100 times here. You will see that this has tons of sharpening applied there again. This is the X8 Ultra that has more sharpening applied, more processing going on than the X9 Ultra. So more natural details you definitely get out of the X9 Ultra. Then this shot here again with 6x, dedicated 6x lens here, 3.1, 6.3 actually. This is like the portrait mode that I tried on both here, both 6.3, but using the dedicated sensor on the X8 Ultra. You will see that it's sharper. It's sharper definitely, and this is now natural sharpness, because it's like doesn't have to crop in from the sensor, and it's a bit more better there in terms of such portrait shots on the X8 Ultra. But in general, I would say that the more the zoom in 10, 20 times, for example, here, the more it becomes evident that the Find X9 Ultra has the advantage there. This looks a bit more processed, there's a bit more sharpening going on, this looks like optical zoom. And the main camera sensor is very close together between those two, but if you really pixel peep and look at the detail levels, sometimes it's either processing or the details are a little bit on the side of the Find X9 Ultra there. If you look at those things here, maybe at the gate and at the holes in here, you will see that it's a bit less detailed here, where here you can see the holes a little bit more, and the same goes for the stairs there. So there's a bit of a tiny resolution difference between those two. Also here the shades a bit more. So the fence is a difference, and some things here, maybe the holes. Do you notice much of a difference between those two? There is a bit of a difference there, but at daylight you don't notice so much between those two here. And 2x shot again is the only thing, is like the resolution being a bit higher on the 9x X9 Ultra, and the X8 Ultra a little bit less resolution, that's all. Then telezoom sensor, if you go 30x, again, this was the moving subject there, heavily edited, heavily processed on the X8 Ultra. The X9 Ultra looks like an optical zoom being stretched a bit far. You see this like pinkish kind of neck. It's completely lost in the information of the X8 Ultra because usually they don't have such things. But this one had like a little bit of the pinkish feathers there. And look at the legs, for example. This is a huge difference. This is a huge win for the X9 Ultra. At 6x shot here, a huge difference as well. You see that it's much sharper, much more detailed on the X9 Ultra. Why is that the case? Because sometimes the X8 Ultra's 6x sensor has difficulties focusing. I think it was focusing on this here. Here it's out of focus already. You see how much sharpening is applied here as well. How much editing, but probably it was focusing here. It's very soft, this 6x, so it's like, and this is why this is not sharp and this is sharp here. Might be the issue between those two. Selfie cameras basically identical. There's a daylight, not much of a difference. It's a bit warmer, it's a bit colder there. My eyebrows and so on. Cutouts nicely done. HDR nicely. Performance on both is basically identical when it comes to selfies. And that's it for the daylight shots. Night video now on the Oppo Find X9 Ultra. What do you think about this one here? No dedicated video night mode, 4K 30 frames per second, but auto FPS turned on, so it might go down to 4K 24 frames per second. What do you think about the stability, about noise, internal mic? How about the lens coating with the light there in the background, walking towards the dark now? And how good is stabilization holding up here? And turning towards the light. So what do you think? Now recording with the Oppo Find X8 Ultra, and in my tests so far I was a bit disappointed by the Find X8 Ultra's low light performance there. We have a 1-inch type sensor, maybe with the newest software it is working a little bit better, walking towards the light here, internal mic still. What do you think? How good is the lens coating here? How good is stabilization? Especially when I walk here with the light in the background. What do you think about this one here? Is it feasible? Is it better? Is it worse than the X9 Ultra? What do you think about the performance here on the X8 Ultra? Nighttime shots are quite interesting because the Find X9 Ultra still, with its current firmware, is using the flash for the ultra wide angle here to create this shot, which is very, very dark, but it's also actually accurate, what I saw with my own eyes, where the X8 Ultra is using the automatic night mode. And when you zoom in, details, check it out, much sharper, much more detailed on the X9 Ultra, because it's much faster shutter speed as well. 117, 1.6, not much faster, I would say, but lower ISO. It used the flash, like I said, that helped maybe a little bit. But even if I force the night mode on it, and it gets a bit brighter, but not as bright as the X8 Ultra, it's still sharper. It's still better. It's still doing a better job. Both now, because it's too dark, using the 14.7, so 12, bin down 12 megapixels basically. And still sharper. Look at this, look at that, look at here, look at here. It is a difference, and it's a significant difference that the X9 Ultra is winning here against the X8 Ultra. Now it becomes very interesting because against the Xiaomi, the Find X9 Ultra was surprising me with its 1-inch types, smaller sensor against the 1-inch type sensor. Here it's much closer, I have to say, but it's still something that you see. First of all, colors are a bit more accurate on the X9 Ultra in comparison to the X8 Ultra. It's like almost getting whitish here, where here it's a bit more warmish because it should be. In terms of detail levels, very, very similar. But if you pixel peep, look at the shades here, for example. It looks like a line, but there's light shining through. And if you look here, it looks like dotted lines. And this is actually what is true on, and we can zoom even further if you want it. Here, see the dotted lines. So here, it's almost one line. Because it is like in between the shades, it's really like the holes. And it's not one line hole, it is really, there's like another one like here, and so there is, it's more detailed there. It's just maybe the megapixels there, the resolution is identical between those two. Here you can see it. This is how the shades usually look like. So they have those in-between kind of things there. And yeah, the resolution there, or it's identical, the resolution, but the detail level there on the, and you can even see the file size here, 6.5, 8.5. yeah, it's favoring the Find X9 Ultra with a little bit more details there. But also when you look at here, the cars, for example, or the foliage, the greenery, it looks a bit more detailed, a bit crispier, a bit more realistic, where here it looks like almost a bit soft, a bit painted. And the same feeling you get when you see and then look at the car. This looks like a photograph. This looks like, it could be also painted. It's hard to describe it, but I think you might see the difference between those two. Look at here, greenery, compare it with here. It looks more alive on the left than on the right. And this is something that at daylight you don't notice, but at the nighttime you notice. And this is one thing where I favor the even a little bit smallish, kind of smaller sensor on the Find X9 Ultra, the newer one, over the 1-inch type sensor here. 70mm on both, telezoom at night, no doubt about it. First of all, motion blur, 1/5 of a second, 1/14 of a second. The shutter speed can be a little bit faster because we have a larger sensor, but even though it's a larger sensor, it should work a little bit better. And this is what you expect and what you see here. Then, interestingly enough, I tried everything to get the 6X working on the X8 Ultra. Doesn't work on the X9 Ultra as well. It didn't work. It was just too dark and didn't want to, not 6X, 10X later, sorry. 6X here, I tried to engage it, but didn't work. So this is a crop now from the 3X sensor, and it's doing a better job than this one. If it would be able to switch to the 6X sensor, then it would be something else. Yes, the probably pro mode you can do it, or some tricks you can force it to. But in the hurry, I didn't have the time. But now, more interesting is like the 10X, where I couldn't, for the life of me, get the 10X shot here. Maybe it was not enough light, but this is also cropped from the 3X, and it's still doing a better job than the crop here from the 3X, because also here the 6X wouldn't engage. Then the selfies here at night, warmer exposure, cold exposure, both struggle a little bit, both have to have heavy editing there going on. Eyebrows totally fake, eyes maybe a bit of realistic there. Seems to be a little bit more details now on the face here, where he's a bit softer, but again, it's basically identical between those two in terms of selfies. So nighttime, I think the main and the ultra wide angle, as well as the tele, are a win for the Find X9 Ultra. Ranking and conclusion, the Find X9 Ultra gets a score of 9.6, where the Find X8 Ultra gets a score of 9.5. So we have a clear winner here, which is the Find X9 Ultra. When we look at the details, however, you will see that they're very close. The main camera sensor is very close. It's a bit better on the Find X9 Ultra. At daylight, you don't notice it so much. You really have to pixel peep and look at the detail levels. And sometimes you will see that there's a tiny bit more details there on the X9 Ultra. But especially at nighttime, there is it where you see the big difference between those two. More details there, higher resolution, looks a little bit better, cleaner on the X9 Ultra than on the X8 Ultra. And the same you can say for the ultra wide angle, that even with this weird kind of, I use the flash now automatically in auto mode instead of the night mode, the X9 Ultra, even if it doesn't use it and you switch night mode on, the ultra wide angle produces a cleaner, sharper, more detailed image there. At daylight, it's also a bit wider and sometimes also a bit sharper, which is quite fantastic and a good update for the X9 Ultra. Then the zoom performance. Yes, I have a perfect 10. If you look at the index score, however, the maximum is 5. It is not perfect yet, but it is as close to perfect as it can get with its telezoom performance there. Very large main primary telezoom, and then a secondary 10x zoom that especially helps for 10x and 30x zooms that are still usable, where the Find X8 Ultra struggles a lot with them. And then of course low light performance is also something where I think the X9 Ultra has an advantage over the X8 Ultra, even though both have a bit of a struggle with the second tele sensor not kicking in always when it's getting too dark. Video recording is also a bit better on the X9 Ultra. You see it on the front-facing camera with better HDR, better stabilization throughout the picture and frame. We have more features there with video recording, like switching from the front to the back or vice versa, which is not possible on the X8 Ultra. And in general, I think that the ultra wide angle and stabilization is a little bit better on the X8 Ultra in comparison to the X9 Ultra. And especially when you see low light performance on both, because low light performance is a huge difference there. The X9 Ultra is beating the X8 Ultra. That was simply too smudgy, even on the main cameras. It's just too smudgy and almost unusable. I was really disappointed by the X8 Ultra, and I'm positively surprised by the X9 Ultra. Portrait mode is also identical in this case. Yes, it's showing as a winner here because this is calculated. It's not like, but it's identical between those two. Yes, you have, if you really pixel people, this is why it's winning here. And this is why the X9 Ultra is the portrait king, more natural kind of portraits. The X8 Ultra was a previous portrait king because before the Xiaomi 17 Ultra came. Xiaomi 17 Ultra took the crown there because it had all the details, but was not so over sharpened as the X8 Ultra. And now what the X9 Ultra is doing is giving a little bit more details, and again, without this over sharpening. It's even giving a bit more details than the Xiaomi 17 Ultra is doing. Yes, it's also more computational, but it's looking more natural as well. At the same time, giving more details, but looking natural, even though it is using a lot of computational stuff there. This is why overall the portrait king is the X9 Ultra. Selfie camera, identical, not much of a difference. Sometimes the X8 Ultra does perform a bit better, sometimes the X9 Ultra performs a little bit better. Both do sometimes heavily edit stuff like the nighttime photos, for example. I'm not so keen off, I have to say, but they're both identical there in the performance ratio. Camera UI is a win for the X9 Ultra. They overhauled the user interface, made it one hand, one thumb controllable, which is much welcome there. In terms of extra features, I cannot declare a winner. Both are basically identical there. Yes, sometimes the X9 Ultra has a little bit more features than the X8 Ultra, but it's negligible there in this region right now. Yeah, there's 8K recording and such things, but we have the video performance already, video recording that is winning there. I grant the X8 Ultra the same kind of extra feature points there. By the way, if you're interested in checking out your own comparison, maybe the Find X9 Ultra against another device that I have tested, you can go onto the website, hit the compare tool, and then you can enter your own phone in there and you can compare and check them out. Even the technical specifications are possible. The link down below in the description. Let's check out the ranking now. Where does it end up? The Oppo Find X9 Ultra is on second rank, still with 9.6 score, just merely a little bit, tiny bit worse than the X200 Ultra there. And the X8 Ultra is on fifth spot, a tiny bit worse than the Xiaomi 17 Ultra. And the middle child is the Huawei Pura 80 Ultra. Probably when I'm in China, I will do a comparison X9 Ultra versus Pura 80 Ultra, because I think this might be very interesting, especially in the zoom department, because they're so close together there. And it might end up, I have to change one of the rankings there. Because yeah, we have a new software version there on Pura 80 Ultra, HarmonyOS 6.1, that also optimized a bit in terms of cameras. And yeah, maybe the Find X9 Ultra gets a software update as well, gets even better or worse, or we'll have to see. Maybe my points are wrong because I only did 2 comparisons so far, and usually I need to take 3 to, or even more, 5 to be absolutely sure about all the points that I'm giving here. Anyway, if you have some questions, comments, put them down below. Until the next time, bye.